remember speaking with an entrepreneur, sold his business for 50 million, and he said, I spent 8 hours sitting on the dining room table looking out the window thinking, what have I done and what is next? I've got no idea.
Welcome to Tip Top Grow Up Your Business with Metronomics. Join me, Shannon Byrne Susko, and Metronomics certified coach, Jed Roberts.
We'll be talking to business thought leaders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and business team coaches who have all taken the journey to grow up their businesses to their tip top.
We'll be sharing strategies, systems, stories on how you can grow your company up at the speed you want.
If you're searching for your path to the tip top and feel your time is running out, then this podcast is for you.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to the show. I'm joined today by someone who has been helping leaders around the world of business for a really long time, and not only helping them grow, but helping them live better lives. And Brad Giles is an entrepreneur, a coach, an author of actually 4 powerful books. Right? One is Made to Thrive. One is Onboarded for managers. And I really want to talk today about your most recent book, which is Bigger Isn't Better, Better is Better. And I always check myself. I always double check, like, did I say that right? Because, this is why we want to talk about this. So welcome. I really want, Brad, you today to just share your journey, your entrepreneurial, your coach, and now author of just, a lot of the whys. And we want people to walk away today with understanding your experience and why you do what you do every day. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here with you, chatting. Let's enjoy ourselves today, Shannon.
Well, we always do. Just for the listeners listening in, Brad and I can have, what we thought was a 30-minute conversation, and it can end up being like 6 hours later. We're not going to do that to you today. We're going to try and stay focused on the key points that I want to make sure you walk away with today. Brad, when people ask you what you do today, how do you usually answer this question?
It's hard at times because the word coach, which is how I would answer that question,
yes,
is quite a complicated answer. Coach, advisor. I really just use the word coach and defend it and say I've been coaching for almost 15 or 16 years and in the pursuit of mastery for mid-market companies.
Nice.
Who want to build a great business and life. And
love it.
There's a lot of people who call themselves coaches and they may be doing very good work, but I'm kind of on my own path.
Yeah, love it. So let's talk about a little bit about your entrepreneur journey. We could spend a lot of time there, and there's a lot to learn, and your experience has impacted a lot of people on the lessons you've learned and on the companies you've built and all those experiences. But let's think about it this way. You built and scaled some businesses yourself before becoming a coach. Looking back on that, give me a couple of the biggest aha lessons you carry from those years as an entrepreneur. And I know you and I could laugh because we could talk for hours about all those lessons, but grab the big ones.
So I hired a business development firm, and they were, I guess they were some really fancy accountants from town, from the city, level 30 in the city, and joined a program with them way back in about 2001 or 2. And I can remember at the time we were one of the fastest growing companies in Australia, and we got an award for being, I think, 8th fastest at that point in time.
Wow.
Around about that same time, I can remember because we were growing fast and we knew nothing about working capital, we were having a cash flow challenge. And so I rock up to this business development meeting with these specialists, and it was in a group program. And I remember they said to me, okay, so today we're going to learn how to send out faxes so that you can bring more leads into your business. And I had to sit there for an hour where they went through all of these things, how to send out faxes, which is like a paper version of an email for the younger people on the
Yeah,
on the podcast.
for those who don't remember faxes.
And I always swore from that moment onwards that everything has to be customized, and we've got to meet people where they're at. So it kind
Yeah.
of wraps in a couple
Yeah.
of different things about my journey, I guess, into one simple thing. But yeah, I've started 6 companies over the years. When I was in school, I was getting in trouble for trying to do business at school, and started my first business, which was a cleaning business because it was so easy to get
Yeah.
into, kind of.
Yeah.
And then I had a nursery, which was wholesale plants for farmers in salt affected areas.
I didn't know about that one, I don't think.
Yeah, and then just kind of went through and had a variety of different business in different industries. Some of them went well, some of them didn't go so well, but in the main, just massive learnings all along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, did you ever find yourself chasing bigger in any of your own companies? Mm, what, I know we're going to talk more about that, but what did you find yourself chasing bigger?
Yeah, it's an interesting question in the context of the book because yes, pretty much all the time, right? uh, and this is a book about mindset. Um,
Yeah.
uh, and there's I suppose going back to what we said about coaches before, right?
Yeah.
There's a load of people out there who say things that are almost, in fact, most likely unbelievable. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can turn your $2 million business into $250 million in 6 weeks. Just sign up for my course, this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not only does it discredit the good work that many people do, but also it actually might not be what you want. And thirdly,
Yeah.
what are you going to sacrifice along the way? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I think Marshall Goldsmith said, uh, too many people climb the ladder of life, and then they get to the top realizing that they put it on the wrong wall at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, definitely have, I mentioned before, for a couple of years, we were one of the fastest growing companies in
Yeah.
our country. And I've been a voracious learner over the years. And I definitely have succumbed to that. And I would say that to that point, the book is really, the ink is made of the blood and sweat and tears of myself
Yes.
and all of the entrepreneurs that I've known and been friends with and work with along the years.
Yeah. I love that. And it's actually why I wanted to start there because we all know as we become entrepreneurs and remain entrepreneurs, we can find ourselves chasing that at times and actually forgetting, or maybe not even realizing the mindset that maybe could get us to a better place, both in business and in life. And what was your big turning point that sort of pushed you from running businesses into coaching others?
That's a good question. So I had sold a job board, so a place where you advertise jobs. I'd,
Yeah.
I'd,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd sold that, and I thought to myself, what is it that I want to do next? Because I knew I could start another company, but I thought,
Yes.
I actually used the Jim Collins hedgehog on myself. And
Yeah.
I
Awesome.
thought, what is it? And like I literally drew it out and went through this great introspection. And I thought, what is it that gave me the greatest joy and greatest passion? And it was spending time offsite with my leadership team. Like I just love that. And I just thought if I could do that every single day, I'd be
Yeah, I love that
delighted.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Love
prof,
that.
yeah, Profit Per X did the same, and
Yeah.
Best Stat did the same. And yeah, I came to that conclusion, and then I thought, all right, well, how can I do it every single day? And that's where it started.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that answer because I laugh, we're just finishing up September. We've done a lot of planning sessions and every day's like, woohoo, I get to go and do a planning session with my clients. It's so fun. And I didn't actually know that's what got you from entrepreneur to coach. Tell me about is there a story from your coaching work that, and I'm sure there's lots of stories, but one that sort of, kicks off our discussion around the idea of better, not bigger in action?
Yeah. And the first thing that people say when they read the title and not even the subtitle
Yeah.
is something like, why don't you like big businesses? Or why should I? Oh, I've heard about people and they had 20 people and they were unhappy, and then they went back to having 3 people and they were happy. It's got nothing to do with that at all. Okay. So to answer your question, there's a client of ours, and we've worked with them. I've worked with them for, I would say 4 or 5 years. And they very much like the Bo Burlingham small giants philosophy, companies who work to be great instead of big. This calendar, sorry, in the last 12 months, this company's done about 300% growth. Okay. But they're fully embracing the better company mentality.
Yes.
So better translates into compounding. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
better and compounding translates into not only the revenue size of your business or the market cap of your business, but it also translates into a better life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of my favorite words is compounding. I
I
love
do.
the word compounding. I love that you explain it that way because and I love how you open it up because when you instantly look at that title, people would come back with that. But it actually draws you in a little further, which
Yeah.
is why I want to get in and talk a little bit more about that. But before I do, I just want to do a quick look back to like your first book. Your first book was Made to Thrive, right?
Yeah.
Right. And like what was why was that an important message to you at that time that when you wrote that book? What was what was the thought there?
Yeah. I guess with each of the books, I've tried to find a topic that I was frustrated about because I couldn't point our clients to a book that they could read. And
Yeah.
um and there are a lot of good books that I have no interest in replicating, and I would much rather
Yeah.
say to our
Yeah. Yeah.
clients,
Yeah.
that's the
Read that
one.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go and read Three Hag Way or whatever it
Yeah. Yeah.
is. But the first book was born because we we knew what needed to be done to the business through Three Hag Way and later Metronomics, and even earlier on Rockefeller Habits and some of those other books.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
knew, and Great Game of Business. We there was a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
books about this is what you've got to do to the business. But equally, we didn't know what the role of the CEO was. We know what a nurse does, an architect, a
Yeah.
plumber, but what is the role of the CEO? And it's very, very different than just being the sales manager or VP sales in a organization and then taking it on. It's a completely different job. And so that was the motivator to write that book, which had a working title of The 5 Roles of a CEO.
Yeah. Which is, I love that book myself because I point some of my CEOs over to that book as they're evolving in their role and how they got in their role or if they're new to the role. It's fantastic. And so I love that explanation and why you wrote it because we use so many books with our clients and what we're trying to do with our clients and to help them just, get that sort of awareness, right, of where they are
Yeah.
on their journey. Okay, so then came onboarded, right, where you honed in on getting new hires productive. But like every client of mine have read this book. Even when new people come on, they read this book because it is so critical. So, what drove you to dedicate an entire book to the challenge? Because I'm grateful for it personally, because I was looking for that book and you wrote that book. So I love that.
It's the same reason. Like it's born of frustration, really, in a professional and serious context,
Yes.
because there wasn't a book there. I love Top Grading and I love Who by Brad Smart and Jeff
Yes.
Smart,
Yeah. Yeah.
respectively. Like they're on our recommended reading list. Go and read
Yes.
those. But the body of evidence was there that you can hire an A player, but when they arrive, if you don't do anything, it's going to affect retention,
Yeah.
and they're probably not
Yeah.
going to be successful in the role. And I think the other thing I really wanted to do was we spend, or I find myself spending so much time talking about role scorecards and coming back to them
Mhm.
that I
Yeah.
needed a simple way to explain it as well. So I kind of tried to wrap it two into one. And so again, the book just wasn't there.
Good. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. And, it's funny. One of my longer clients, we're talking about, the hiring system in an organization, right? To get hired, and then the onboarding system, and everyone reflects back to the great system and framework provided in that book. So if listeners haven't read Onboarded yet, it is golden in the fact of the matter of onboarding isn't a day or two or even an hour. It's a system, and it's a good, 90 days at minimum. And it's really great because it lays out who's accountable for the onboarding. I mean, that's one of of course, my favorite things. So we're really clear about that. And we spend so much effort hiring. Let's make sure we can get them, into the culture and in and being really productive. So let's deep dive into bigger isn't better, better is better. Um, let's start at the same place. So I think I know how you're going to answer this, but maybe not. So what sparked this point? Was there a moment or a client story or maybe a few stories where you realized that this is something that we need to really, get to our clients, that we need to focus on, and we need to sort of show and share and tell the story of?
Recount what I mentioned before about the blood, sweat, and tears of myself primarily, and many, many, many of the people I've known and worked with. And I think that why the question that I was trying to uncover or answer is, why do so many people spend so much of their lives only to find out at the end it's not what they really
Mm,
want, and so much
yeah,
wasted effort. Now, again, I that needs to be born in the context of that someone that I work with has grown their company by 300% in the last year, and so it's not about that. It's about compounding and focusing your effort in the right area. So it's about thinking about, rather than I will succeed if I put another zero onto end of my revenue number,
yeah,
go from
yeah,
1 million to 10 million, 10 million to 100 million, whatever it is, like that focus on bigger is actually having a negative downstream effect on everything that you
yeah,
do. And it
yeah.
may have second order consequences.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that for so many reasons. And I think one of the biggest things, and, I think of the time where, I rolled in to entrepreneurism and getting in there and getting like going. Why do you think entrepreneurs are so seduced by bigger? Like, where does that pressure really come from?
Yeah, well, there's a whole section on this in the book, and uh, I spent, this was actually in writing. So a book takes for me like 2 or 3 years to write, and this was
Yes.
a major sticking point, because I wanted to get it right, but not not get it correct, but not write
Yes.
a full book about this. But it really comes from a few different areas. Firstly, it's your psychology. So there's this thing called the thematic appetition test, and so it says that it breaks down people into different types of needs. There is the need for power. There is the need for affiliation, and then there is the need for achievement. So need for power. One of the things I do very early in the book is break apart the difference between a company or an owner-led company and a corporation. And corporation is what I'm suggesting is effectively a system that no one controls, because the board works for the shareholders and the CEO works for the board and the leaders work for the CEO. But it is this whole system where everybody can get fired, and it doesn't offer freedom. Okay, but what it does offer is an excellent accountability mechanism, but we don't have that in owner-led company. So therefore, we can do anything as an owner-led company, but we can't do everything. And that great freedom that we all look for, and the reason why many people start their business, actually creates the real problem. Okay, and the real problem becomes, well, what do I do? And so we get enamored by bigger. So coming back to your question and the needs, I've got to say that word again, apparition, that needs test. So people with a need for affiliation,
Yes.
they're the kind of people that are like, I get more energy when I go and hang out with people. Like, I have to find a job where I can connect with people and care for people and chat to people. That's it. People with a need for power often find themselves in corporations or politics of any form, where they like to, I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, in a corporation, people are just a number. They're treated as just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
people in corporations love to collect those numbers. They like lots of power. And then
Yes.
you get to the people who are third, which is like probably you and I and perhaps many of our listeners,
Yeah. Yeah.
the need for achievement. And need for achievement, maybe you've done a lot of sports when you were younger. Maybe you're just more of a competitive person and you love to compete and win. And so that's a part of the psychology. And then the second one is your DNA. And the science kind of states that genetically, some people are just more prone to be entrepreneurs, without
Yeah.
digging any further into that.
Yeah.
And then the third one is society. And in society, we all see that bigger is better everywhere we go. Bigger buildings, bigger competitions. GDP is how we measure everything. So the whole world around us is focused on bigger rather than better.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I wanted to make sure I asked that question because for, some of the listeners, of course, they're one of those three. And then it's married up with, you started a business and you went and, raised some capital on bigger,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
necessarily better. I can tell you that's part of my story. And
Yeah.
then, and then I needed to figure out better, because otherwise I would never have survived just the bigger, giving that bigger ROI. I would have like burned myself out and my team out, and, the impact wouldn't have been the same. So how do you define better in a way that leaders can measure and act on?
I'm going to answer that in the way that you don't anticipate. So, do you know a guy called Mike Markkula? Have you heard of that?
No,
Okay.
no.
So Mike Markkula he was a 1/3 owner in the largest company, in what later became the largest company in the world. Now, you may have heard of his business partner, Steve Jobs, right? So
Yes,
Steve
absolutely.
and Steve Wozniak. So he
Yes.
was Mike Markkula was the first investor in Apple, and he was the chairman of the board, and he was the first or second CEO. Okay, he owned 1/3 of what later became the largest company in the world. Now, there was a point in time where Mike made this famous phrase that we need to hire a CEO because we need adult supervision in the room, because
Yes.
Steve Jobs was too undisciplined and too impatient. Okay. And so they hired John Scully. Now, John Scully, you know the story. We've been
Yes.
working at Pepsi. He did the Pepsi challenge. He was a great marketer, came in, and then the long story short is that Steve Jobs got pushed out of his own company, ultimately came back, and then we all know the story from there, right? But
Yes.
Mike Markler is central to that and that statement, which is undisciplined and impatient. Okay.
Yes.
And what we then get is in the book, and it's way too early to bring a 2x2 matrix into a book on like the third chapter, but I did it anyway.
I saw that. I was like, go, Brad.
But it's the essence of the entrepreneur,
Yes,
right?
Brad.
You heard
Yes.
entrepreneurs, they
Yes.
chase shiny things.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur, on one axis, we've got patience and or patient and impatient, and disciplined and undisciplined. And so what Mike Markler was saying at that point is that Steve Jobs is an impulsive risk taker. Okay.
Yes.
And that is the definition that most entrepreneurs fall into. And going back to your question, that is what we've got to endeavor to understand as entrepreneurs, that I fall into this trap naturally of being an impulsive risk taker. And I instead need to become a strategic executor, which is discipline and patience. And
Yeah. I'm going to add one thing, because
yeah,
I love that you use the example you used, because, Steve Jobs has been that example has been used a few times, that
yeah,
in memory of Steve Jobs 1.0 and Steve Jobs 2.0, right? And the
yes.
biggest difference between the two is exactly what you described, though. What is the thing, like in your experience, that moves someone that, some won't move, right? Some are going to stay like that, and that's just who they're going to be and carry on. But what's the biggest thing that moves, someone who's in that, undisciplined, risk taking and all that? Like, how do you move them? Like Steve Jobs moved. Like, there's lots of evidence, and sort of lots of people describing the difference between 1.0 and 2.0.
It's the
What's
same.
your
It
take
was
on
the
that?
same with me. And I know your story. It was the same with you, right?
Yeah.
It was a coach and a system, right?
Yeah.
And, the word confidently disciplined, right?
Yeah.
The one
Yeah.
word, confidently disciplined. Well, what takes an undisciplined, impatient person to be a strategic executor, where they become disciplined and patient? Well, they understand their strategy, how they're going to be different in the market, and they're disciplined in the execution of that. But they've got to believe in it, and they've got to know that it's going to work. And it is only the hard work that we do with clients that takes them on their way. So if I was to say, so what is the difference over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? It's that we take them from being an impulsive risk taker to a strategic executor. How do we do it? Well, it's through the planning, it's through the strategic work, it's through all of the thinking, it's all of the work that we do along the way. Steve Jobs 1.0 to 2.0, I mean, I kind of look at that as a great example, because you don't need to get
It's such a
fired
good
from your own
example.
company and bring in a
Yeah.
John
No.
Scully. No, like,
No.
you can do it another way.
No.
There is a better way.
Yeah. And so when because uh, the going from 1.0 to 2.0, and thinking about, there's behavior all in there. But the thing that, you kicked off with, and even when we talked before we, started in on this, it's about the mindset, right?
Yeah.
And it's about the mindset of the 1.0, and then the growth to the 2.0. When a CEO is chasing bigger, how do you guide and reframe their focus to better, even though, like, a little bit, I think you and I both know, like, we do it inherently, right, within how we do it. But give our listeners a little bit more insight into, guiding the reframe of the focus to better. And sometimes they don't even know it became better rather than bigger.
Um, I think I think that that's what I tried. That's what it took me 50,000 words to figure out, right?
I
Um,
know. I
l-
know. I'm sorry to drop that bomb of a
yeah,
question on you, but I really wanted to ask you that question because I know
yeah,
you thought about this a long time. You've got lots of experience on both sides. You have lots of awareness of even your journey and my journey and others, have reflected on their journeys. 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. I think it took me longer
yeah.
to find it.
I think that I think that the best way I can answer that, and I want you to stop me if you don't think that I've answered the question, but
No, no, no.
is to look at the doom loops within the book,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The doom loop is a concept from Jim Collins that I've adapted to suit what we do across different areas of our business. And and as soon as I show that to entrepreneurs, they're like, "Oh, we did that. Yeah, we definitely did that." And I did that myself, right? And and
Yeah.
so and so then how do we stop that and then turn that into a flywheel so that we
Yeah.
can get the
I
thing to
love that
compound.
you did that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that I think that I'm probably going to go back and anchor that in this concept of drift. Um, and so in a steady state, when you're doing nothing to a business, what happens in a business is this thing called drift. So imagine a boat on an ocean that's got no motor, no sail, no anchor. It goes wherever the wind and current takes it. Okay, so it's
Yeah.
drift. So a team teams drift toward toxicity. Customers drift toward indifference. Offerings
Yeah.
drift
Yeah.
toward mediocrity, and financials drift toward unprofitability. And so that forms a part of the basis of the book. So if you and that is the reason that we must do quarterly and annual planning, and why we must work on the business is to counter that drift,
Yeah.
is to build a better
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. And yeah, I love that you went there because that's where my question was going because it's about the indicators to help, show the CEO, show the leader, show a business that they're truly getting better, not just scaling. You can do both. Right? And
Yeah.
quite frankly, one drives the other in a way that, we get the balance, we get the freedom, you get the life that you want and the outcome you're hoping for. But lots just start out with bigger, right? Not thinking better.
It's fine, and I think it's almost natural because of the 3 reasons I mentioned with,
Yes.
the pressure for bigger. Oh, so I've got a $500,000 business. What if I get to 50,000,000? Like, oh, that'd be awesome. My whole life would be different. But, okay, instead, what about if you didn't ruin yourself? What about if you had a business that was 13 or 14,000,000 and you had more
Yeah.
profit and you had more of a life and you had to kind of, here's the thing, right? One of the things, we meet with entrepreneurs all the time and go into their business and they're like, I just don't want to go to work, right?
Yeah.
I just don't like
Yeah.
my team. I'm miserable. And
So
so,
often.
and so what I really, one of the things that I talk about and that I really try to do in this book is say, we're going to get you to fall in love with your business again.
Again.
Okay. Because what they then do is they sell their business. And then they end up, and I literally can remember speaking with an entrepreneur, sold his business for 50 million. And he said, I
Yeah.
spent 8 hours sitting on the dining room table, looking out the window, thinking, what have I done? And what is next? I've got no idea.
Yeah.
And every story is different, but we want people to fall back in love with their business.
Yeah. I love that. And for anyone listening who, is feeling what you just described, stuck on that sort of, bigger treadmill, but has fallen out of love with their business. you and I see it all the time, and we're there to, so many times people, call a coach because they're like, I got to find a way out of this. And then we come in, we actually work the framework, we get them to see differently. And they're at that time frame they thought they were going to exit their business, and they love their business. They don't want to exit. They want to keep going. They're having so much fun. But for those who are not there, because there's listeners in who are like, yeah, we're there, we're having the best time. But there's others who are not there. What's one small practical step they should try this week? What's one step they should take this week if they're in the I'm not in love with my business?
Well, there's there's a reason that teams come first. Okay, so I'm going to use your language here, and probably hack it. But do you have a cohesive team of A players in the leadership team? Right. First of all, have you got all A players in the leadership team? Would you rate
Yes.
them in that manner? A, and then B, are they highly cohesive? So
Yeah.
that's, I would say, more than anything else, that's the first bit. And then, once you take it from there. Now, I try to add a little bit of flavor in that. So very much what I've tried to weave between the words in this book is a strategy to compete against corporations. Okay. So I'm very, I guess,
Yeah.
bold or vocal talking about the difference between a corporation and a company, but also
Yes.
saying that these people are not like you, right? There's a large speaking circuit through North America where people write books to get paid from corporations. And what works in a corporation might not work in an owner-led company. And I really try to make that point quite strongly in the beginning of the book, and then later on to introduce the concept that people who work in a company don't necessarily want to be just a number. And this can be a strategy or a competitive advantage that we can use if we can build soul. And that's,
Love that.
within a business. And you'd know that Bo Burlingham uses the word mojo. It's not exactly the
Yes.
same, but it's a similar concept. So if we
Yeah.
can build a team of A players, or if you surround yourself with A players, cohesive leadership team. Okay, so let's then think about what is the soul? How do we make a more soulful owner-led company?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I love that you take the most practical step you could take is when you've fallen out of love with your business and you don't want to show up anymore. It's looking at, who's on your team, who do you work with? And it gets exciting when we get those A players on the team. They're cohesive, the oozing, the behaviors that, we want to hold consistent. I mean, it sort of gives me goosebumps because it's so fun to
It
play
is.
on a team that you want to get up and go, work together with every day. What's one question I might not have asked about this book, or one point that I didn't get brought up that's really important, what would that be?
Really, it begins with what is bigger, what is better, and then it sets the scene, and then it goes into these different areas. So a better business is what I'm advocating, has a better team, better customers, and think back to that drift that I mentioned before, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Better team, better customers, better offering, better financials. But then the most important one is a better life by design. And uh, I really thought about that quite a lot. And as owner leaders, we are one person. There's not two masks that we take off and put
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
right? So if your life is miserable, your business will suffer. And if your business is miserable, your life will suffer. So if you can get the 4 flywheels turning in a better team flywheel, better customer flywheel, better offering flywheel, better financials flywheel, right? That creates the space for you to build a better life by design. And I know that Jack Daly's got a book called Better Life
Yeah,
by
yeah,
Design, and I
yeah,
really tried to not emulate that, and so I listened very carefully to the whole book, and it's a
yeah.
fantastic book, but this is
Yes,
a
it
very
is.
different topic, and
Yes.
that Better Life by Design is broken down into 5 sections, which is healthy, wealthy, wise, happy, and great family. And
Yeah,
so that's really, if you can create a better business, then you got to create a better life.
yeah. I love that. And I love that you zoomed out because I think it gives, our audience here today an idea of, and lots of CEOs and leaders are listening to this podcast and just understanding where they are and where it will meet them, right? To give them the view of, what levers they might need to pull on, right? And the biggest one, of course, is always building the awareness of where we are today.
Yes.
So if as I, sort of wrap this back around, and maybe this is an unfair question, and maybe I know the answer, maybe I don't know the answer. You've you brought a ton of experience here today. You bring a ton of experience into each of your books and really thoughtful on, why you wrote them. You bring that to your coaching practice. You brought that as an entrepreneur and still do today. Of all of it, because you've had incredible success, what makes you the proudest today?
Yeah, that is an unfair question.
Sorry.
um, you know, um, it's seeing it's having a positive impact on people, right? Um, so there's a client that I work with, and I heard her speaking to other people the other day, and it was in an informal setting, and she, over the last few years, has been to hell and back, right? She expanded across the country, and
Yes.
it didn't work out, and she had to come back, and she's been running her business for, I'd say, 15 years or more, and she was telling me how she did performance reviews, or she was telling the group how she
Mm,
recently did.
yeah.
So, like you, this is an elaborate answer, but you got to bear with me.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm with you.
I'm advocating 90-day performance reviews
Yeah.
religiously against the scorecard,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Which
Yes.
is not where you thought I was going to go. But she said, I've never made as much money as I have in this year. I was looking at making a
Mm,
loss, potentially.
yes. Yeah.
So the Australian financial years go from July to June, right? So she said, I was looking at making a loss, and now this calendar year, I've never made as much money. She said, I just don't care. And it's not, she doesn't care about the staff, but she said, I don't care if people don't want to work on themselves and work well in the business,
Yeah.
like, because the team is so cohesive and tight. If they
Right.
if they're not a part of it, they won't. And she said, frankly, I've just never been in a better state in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And so I think, whilst that's only a few points, knowing the journey, and knowing, how miserable she was a couple of years ago, and
Yeah. Yeah.
just seeing the negative impacts of a lack of discipline and patience, and impulsive risk taker, people who've been on that treadmill and worn out for years and years and years,
Yeah.
taking them to be a strategic executor, helping them to have this framework in their business, and just, like, it makes me deeply upset and emotional that entrepreneurship doesn't do what it says on the tin, right? And so
Yeah.
that's yeah, right?
Yeah.
People lose their business, you know. So yeah, and so I feel like, I think that is the unfair answer to the unfair question.
No, it's a great answer to that question. Like that's huge, right? Because at the end of the day, you and I have talked about this many times. Like, why do we get up and do what we do every day? Is to make the impact on the entrepreneurs, on the leaders, to help them to get them to where they want to end up, right? Not where they got stuck,
Yeah.
right? Because we all start out one direction. When we get stuck in that direction, it's help them, I hate to say unstuck, but it's falling out of love with your business. We want everyone to be happy, and be a part of their business and their life. Like it's huge. It's huge.
In the
So yeah,
in the I was just gonna quickly
yeah,
react to that.
yeah,
In the happy section, healthy, wealthy,
yeah,
wise, happy, great
yeah,
family, I talk about the difference between hegemonia and eudaimonia, right? It's
yeah,
an ancient Greek phrase.
yes,
Hegemonia, like think about hedonism, partying all the time, doing all that kind of stuff. Whereas
yes,
eudaimonia is finding this ongoing sense of joy and happiness. And that's
yeah,
kind of what I heard in what you said. And like
yes,
you need to understand and work toward that and set goals around that and find what's gonna give you the most fulfilling life.
yeah. And I know you work with your leaders this way. I work with my leaders that way, is to give them a framework and a path to keep working as much in their business, but towards the life they want,
Yeah.
right? And making sure that's balanced.
Yeah.
So a couple wrap up questions.
Yep.
Where can where can the audience find out more information about you? Website, LinkedIn? What's the best way to learn more?
Yeah, so the website is evolutionpartners.com.au. I've got a podcast which is called The Evolution Partners.
Yes.
And yeah, mainly LinkedIn is probably the best spot.
Yeah.
Brad Giles, Evolution Partners.
Love it. Love it. Last question. What's next for you? Books out. Yeah, you've been on the journey. It's like books out. What's next?
I don't know. I like, you've done this game. Like, that is not the question that you ask someone at this point in time. Yeah, I think I'm going to look for the thing that frustrates me most, right? And I say
I
that,
love that. And you're going to make an
because
impact for it.
yeah, well, what's missing? What am I seeing? I don't know. I don't want to commit to anything, because at this point it's really it's like yeah, I've been working 7 days a week for months to get this thing to this point, and I don't regret that in any mean, but
Your answer, thought you were going to say, because then I could say this, I thought you were going to say, I'm going to enjoy, the like getting here
well, I
instead of
am
the next thing. Yeah.
I
Cause you
yeah
should. You
I
should. Like, it's huge. Congratulations. Like, I love that you're here and that we just like this conversation we just had is huge.
when we yeah.
What we've been doing.
Yeah, no, that is why you're a coach and why you're a very good coach. Yeah, yeah, no, I'm definitely going to just absorb it a bit because from what I've when we record this, there's probably only like a dozen people who've read the book, maybe
Yeah.
14, and it's
Yeah.
had a really good impact so far. So I'm super
Oh, yeah. Like you're going
excited.
to continue to get feedback and people are going to think this way and that way. And I'm really excited for you because I really, really like the mindset that you've put this in. And it's a great sort of like chunk up and in and look to really the path that a lot of people wouldn't even think this way, that that's the journey they've been on. But a lot of leaders are going to recognize themselves in there, the CEOs, the owners. Oh, and some are going to go, why did it take me so long?
Mm,
And others are
yeah,
going to go, oh, I'm so glad I've been on that journey for the last 10 years or whatever it is. Right. So, yeah, I'm super proud of this book, of you. It's
thank you.
huge. Congratulations. I'm really, you just gave me a whole bunch of your time to have this really refreshing conversation. And I love your clarity about how you're helping leaders see the success that isn't about chasing more, really. It's about, taking hold of what you have and building something better year after year. So that just brings me a lot of joy. So for everyone listening, I highly recommend each of Brad's book, but of course the newest, because it brings together your really unique perspective and amount of time you spent, sharing not only, your journey and wisdom in that, but also the coaching view of it. And I love that maybe I stumped you on a couple of questions today. How's
Yes,
that? You know,
I would
we've gone
expect
down each
nothing.
other's podcast.
I'd expect nothing less. And
Mhm.
I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. I really hope people pick up your book, especially your latest book, but each one of these books will help you solve something that you're facing in your business today. With that, thank you, Brad. We'll see you again soon, I know. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. See you next time.